Attempting to lighten the mood, Morris asked, "Do you guys need food and water while you're down here? I mean, you can't exactly survive on air." Silver 2 turned to him, its translucent skin faintly shimmering. "We are sustained by nutrients absorbed through our skin. The bacteria present in this cavern are abundant and sufficient." Mark raised an eyebrow. "That's unsettling, but practical, I guess." Morris shook his head in disbelief, muttering under his breath, "Lucky bacteria. They're living their best lives without knowing it." The Silvers paid no heed to the comment, their focus sharp as Morris shifted the conversation to strategy. "All right, let's get down to business. We need detailed reports on the Greys, their strengths, weaknesses, and war tactics. We need to know how they think, what they value, and what to expect." Mark chimed in enthusiastically. "And we need to understand your tech and your allies' tech. What's available? What's practical? I've got ideas for how to use the teleport tech, but I need more data, its limitations, capacity, range, and flexibility. I don't want to pitch something without knowing its full potential first." Silver 2 nodded, its tone carrying faint curiosity. "Your creativity is promising. We have already observed the possibilities you imagine, possibilities we had not considered." Morris, clearly unsettled, interjected sharply, "Hold on. You said you wouldn't control our minds, but now you're saying you're poking around in them?" Silver 2's tone remained calm but firm. "We have not violated our promise. We do not control you. We observe to understand the true scope of your capabilities. This is vital for determining your capacity to achieve your goals." Mark, sensing Morris's unease, tried to diffuse the tension. "I think they're saying it's like brainstorming, Uncle Morris. They're watching how we think to get ideas, not to boss us around." Silver 3 spoke gently. "Your mind remains your own. Our intention is only to explore the depth of possibility, not to interfere." The flood of knowledge. Silver 1's voice carried a finality, cutting through the strategic discussions that had dominated the Silver's underground spaceship for the last several hours. "Reports on the Greys and available technologies will be organized and fed directly to your minds, Mark and Morris, as soon as they are ready. You will access them seamlessly through the interface." It was not a request. It was a declaration, an irreversible reality that Mark and Morris had no choice but to accept. The moment these reports were completed, his mind would become a direct extension of Earth's intelligence grid, absorbing every weakness, every advantage, every classified revelation about their enemy in real time. It was a radical process, one perfected by the Silvers. Information would not be read, not studied in the traditional sense. It would be implanted, merging with his own cognitive functions, becoming instinct rather than learned knowledge, ensuring that the moment action was required, he would already know exactly what to do. But this technology, it came with risks. The Silvers had explained it before. The human brain was not built for direct mental uploads, for instant integration of strategic intelligence, for having thousands of data streams placed into thought without effort. There was a reason this method had never been used before. Humanity had simply never possessed the neurological architecture to withstand it without pain. But now the war had forced evolution. Now humans had no choice but to use technology beyond their natural limits. And Mark and Morris, they had to be the first ones to endure it. The interface was prepared, a neural bridge designed to synchronize his mind with the compiled reports, filtering through the vast archives of captured Grey technology, connecting his thoughts directly to the Silver's historic and tactical archives. Silver 1 gestured toward the activation console, watching Mark and Morris carefully. "When this begins, you may experience disorientation. Memories may shift, perceptions may blur, but do not resist. The data must settle naturally." Mark took a breath. This was it. No turning back. With a final nod, he stepped forward and activated the link. The moment the upload initiated, Mark and Morris felt it, a tidal wave of information collapsing into their minds, every detail known by the Silvers of the Grey Empire, every classified scientific discovery, every fragment of war intelligence, delivered at once. Their vision blurred. They weren't here anymore. They were in every battle, every strategy session, every hidden corner of knowledge Silvers had collected on the Greys. Their war habits, their technological weaknesses, their communications network, their failed invasions across history, the secrets behind their mind control, their political fractures, the small instabilities in their empire. It was too much, but at the same time, it wasn't enough. Mark needed more. He needed everything. Because once he had it all, once his mind fully processed the entirety of the reports, humanity would finally have the edge it had always needed. This wasn't just information. This was humanity's survival itself. And Mark was ready for everything. Because the war was far from over, and Earth was going to finish it, once and for all. After finalizing their plans, the Silvers invited Mark and Morris to leave the ship, assuring them that they would be virtually present with Mark at all times. Morris sighed, shaking his head slightly. Well, guess we're never alone now. No pressure. Mark grinned, opening the portal with practiced ease. As the shimmering gateway appeared, Mark looked at the Silvers with a nod of appreciation. Thanks for trusting us. We won't let you down. Silver 3 raised its hand in the human gesture of farewell. We will be with you always, observing and supporting. Mark and Morris stepped through the portal, returning to the familiar world above. Though their roles were shifting, and the weight of the mission was heavy, they both knew this was just the beginning of humanity's fight for survival, and their bond would be key to unlocking the strength required for the challenges ahead. The Resistance blueprint Mark and Morris materialized back in the comic book store's basement, the familiar surroundings grounding them after the surreal atmosphere of the Silvers' ship. Morris leaned against a stack of old comic boxes, arms crossed, his curiosity bubbling over. All right, kid, spill it. What's this brilliant idea that impressed the Silvers so much? Mark rubbed his hands together, pacing with excitement. Okay, hear me out. I still need more details on their tech. But I've been thinking, what if we could make the portals invisible? And what if we could bend them, like making them conform to the human body? Imagine using a portal as a shield, one that teleports rays, blasts, or projectiles right back at the Greys. We'd literally turn their weapons against them. Brilliant and terrifying all at once. Mark continued, his voice gaining momentum as his ideas spilled out. And what about opening portals under thousands of enemy troops? They're droids, they're war beasts. Just drop them into the center of the Earth, or teleport them into deep space. Or bury them alive by teleporting them 20 feet underground. Morris stared at him, speechless for a moment. Kid, you've got a knack for this. I love your ideas. They're bold, they're smart, and they're kind of ruthless, not gonna lie. Mark grinned but wasn't done yet. We're looking at the possibilities the Silvers haven't even considered. Imagine teleporting explosives directly into Grey ships. No escape, no defense. This tech is underrated, Uncle Morris. If we can push its limits, we can change everything. Morris shook his head in disbelief, a proud smile creeping onto his face. You really are something else. But we've got to plan this carefully. If we're going to adapt the tech to these uses, we need all the details. Its capacity, range, flexibility, the limits. Then we need to figure out how to mass-produce the gizmos, or if necessary, implant devices like yours in people. Mark nodded, his tone serious now. We'll need at least 3 teleporters per major city in the world. That's a lot of people, and everything has to be done in absolute secrecy. The inner circle. As the ideas flowed, Mark glanced at Morris, a nervous glint in his eye. You know, we're going to have to tell my parents eventually. This is way bigger than us. If they know, it'll make everything easier. Morris hesitated, the weight of the suggestion sinking in. Yeah, you're probably right. Joe and Martha are practical. Well, Joe anyway. And it'd be a nightmare trying to keep this secret with them breathing down our necks. But we can't just spring this on them. We need a plan. He paused, eyeing Mark thoughtfully. Speaking of plans, tomorrow's Monday. Your first day of high school. You sure you're ready for that? Mark slumped into a chair, the excitement draining from his face. Honestly, Uncle Morris, high school feels meaningless now. How do I focus on grades and football practice when we're talking about saving the planet? Everything else feels like a waste of time. Morris crouched beside him, his tone low but firm. Listen, Mark. I get it. Your priorities have shifted, and everything else seems small right now. But if we're going to succeed, we've got to be patient. We can't rush into this half-baked. The Silvers are judging everything you do, and high school's part of the picture. Think of it as training. If you can keep your cool there, you'll prove you can handle the bigger stuff. Mark nodded reluctantly, but his determination flickered in his eyes. All right, I'll keep at it. But we need to trust each other completely and share every idea we have. No holding back. Morris grinned. That's the spirit. Speaking of sharing ideas, the first thing we need to do is build an inner circle. A group of people we trust completely. The right people, for the right jobs. Mark sat up straight, his mind already racing. Ben and Jason, they've been my best friends since kindergarten, and they're incredibly creative. They'd be perfect for brainstorming. Morris thought for a moment, then nodded. I like it. And we'll add Joe and Martha to the group, not just because it'll make life easier, but because it's impossible to do this while constantly making excuses for our absences. The two exchanged looks of agreement as Morris added, After that, anyone who joins needs to bring something to the table. Expertise, skills, something useful to the resistance. No exceptions. Mark leaned forward, his excitement returning. Let's focus on preparing the inner circle first. We can make sure they're ready for the big revelation. Once they're on board, we can start building the larger resistance. Morris clapped him on the shoulder, proud of the resolve he saw in Mark. All right, kid. Looks like we've got ourselves a plan. Let's make it happen. The comic store basement felt like the starting point for something monumental. Two unlikely heroes preparing to defy impossible odds. With their ideas sharp and their bond strong, they knew the journey ahead would be anything but easy. But for the first time, they felt like the resistance was possible. The countdown had begun. Mark's first day of high school began with a deceptive calm. The morning classes were uneventful, almost soothing in their normalcy. Economics with Mrs. Luna was surprisingly engaging. Her dry humor and knack for turning boring concepts into relatable anecdotes made her a favorite almost instantly. Art class with Mrs. Lipes was equally enjoyable. Mark had always loved drawing from imagination, and Mrs. Lipes encouraged creativity with an enthusiasm that felt genuine. For a moment, Mark thought high school might not be so bad. Mark's first day at high school carried an odd, deceptive calm. The world had been changing around him, war preparations accelerating, yet somehow, walking into this new chapter of life still felt like something normal, something untouched by the chaos brewing beneath the surface. The morning classes helped reinforce that illusion, almost soothing in their normalcy. The teachers who made a difference. Mrs. Luna, the economics teacher, was nothing like he expected. Dry humor, sharp insights. She had a way of making even the most mind-numbing concepts feel alive, relatable. Instead of droning on about markets and supply chains, she talked about real people, decisions that shaped civilizations, how economies weren't just numbers, but choices made in desperate moments of survival. Mark had expected monotony, but instead, he found depth. Then there was Mrs. Lipes, the art teacher. Her energy was infectious. Creativity wasn't just encouraged, it was demanded. Mark had always loved drawing from imagination, sketching the worlds inside his mind, crafting visions of battles and survival beyond Earth. And unlike other teachers, she didn't tell him to tone it down, to make his work fit within acceptable themes. She pushed it further, told him to go deeper, to create not just with skill, but with story, with emotion, with fire. For a brief, fleeting moment, Mark believed high school might not be so bad, that he could balance normal life with the chaos that was coming, that somehow he might still get to experience something real, something not dictated by war. But deep down he knew, this peace wouldn't last, because his world was not normal anymore. Mark had been coasting through the day, settling into high school life with quiet acceptance, not expecting anything too extraordinary. Then, science class with Miss Gooby. And suddenly, nothing felt quite the same. A presence. Unlike any other. Miss Gooby was unlike any teacher he had ever encountered. She wasn't just young, she carried herself with a mix of poise, intelligence, and understated elegance that made her seem almost out of place within the school's casual atmosphere. Her green eyes had a sharpness, a piercing intensity that made it feel like she was seeing beyond the surface, assessing more than just what was spoken aloud. Her short light brown hair framed her face perfectly, giving her an air of timeless class, like she belonged somewhere far beyond the confines of a classroom. And her choice of attire, a tailored blue jacket and skirt, accentuating her slim figure, set her apart from the teachers who wore jeans and worn t-shirts, indifferent to formality. She didn't command attention through force, she simply had it, effortlessly. Mark knew it wasn't just him who noticed. The entire class felt it, an energy in the air that hadn't been there moments before. But beneath that confidence, beneath the sharp gaze and professional demeanor, Mark sensed something else. For all her presence, all her effortless charm, there was a hesitation, a barely perceptible nervousness woven into her mannerisms. Her glances, though calculated, occasionally flickered with uncertainty. Her words, though measured, carried a fleeting hesitation at times. It was the kind of uncertainty that didn't stem from incompetence, but rather from the weight of newness. Miss Gooby was new to teaching. That much was clear. And for the first time, Mark felt curious, intrigued in a way he hadn't expected. What was her story? Why was she here? And why did she feel so utterly different from the rest of them? Something told him that Miss Gooby's arrival wasn't just a coincidence, that soon enough, this class would be anything but normal. And Mark? Mark was more than ready to find out why. Unfortunately, her class also introduced Mark to Donald, the self-proclaimed king of the school. Donald was everything Mark despised in a person: loud, arrogant, and obnoxious. He was built like a linebacker, towering over everyone in the room, and he carried himself with the swagger of someone who believed the world revolved around him. Donald's mission was clear. He wanted everyone to know he was the new alpha, the future football quarterback, and the class clown rolled into one. Donald's constant interruptions were unbearable. He cracked dumb jokes, made snide remarks, and laughed at his own wit, which was about as sharp as a butter knife. Miss Gooby tried to maintain control, but it was obvious she was intimidated by Donald's presence. Mark couldn't blame her. Donald was the kind of bully who thrived on making others feel small. Mark had been lucky in his previous schools, avoiding bullies like Donald. But as he watched Miss Gooby struggle to keep the class on track, he realized his luck had run out. Donald's antics were becoming a nuisance, and Mark could see the frustration building in Miss Gooby's eyes. She didn't have the courage to confront him, and Mark knew someone had to step in. "Enough is enough," Mark said loudly, his voice cutting through the chaos like a knife. The classroom fell silent, every pair of eyes turning to him. "Donald, stop with the jokes. You're disrupting our learning." Donald's face darkened, his eyes narrowing as he gave Mark the infamous target look. Everyone in the room knew Mark had just signed his death sentence. Donald stopped his remarks, but the tension in the room was palpable. Mark had killed Donald's inspiration, and the bully wasn't going to forget it. Miss Gooby, visibly relieved, thanked Mark and continued the lesson. But Mark could feel the weight of Donald's gaze on him, a silent promise of retribution. The bell rang, signaling lunch, and Mark was eager to explore the high school cafeteria. He joined Jason and Ben, his best friends, along with Sue and Heather, two familiar faces from junior high. Sue, in particular, seemed to have taken a sudden interest in Mark. The way she looked at him and hung on his every word was hard to miss, and Jason couldn't resist teasing him about it. Together, the group walked to the food counter, pleasantly surprised by the variety and quality of the options. Compared to their old school, this was a culinary paradise. They grabbed their trays and entered the cafeteria, scanning for a table big enough to accommodate their party. As they passed the goths, the artists, the Hispanics, the black students, and finally the jocks, they found an empty table and were about to sit down when chaos erupted. Donald and his minions, Robert, Mike, and Christopher, appeared out of nowhere, blocking their path. Before Mark could react, Donald grabbed Mark's tray and tossed it into the air, sending food flying in every direction. Mark hesitated, unsure whether to retaliate or walk away. Donald made the decision for him, shoving Mark hard enough to nearly knock him over. Ben and Jason sprang into action, ready to defend their friend, but Donald's minions intercepted them, holding them back. "Stand down," Mark said firmly, stepping forward to confront Donald. Sue and Heather pulled out their phones, recording the scene and warning Donald that he was being filmed. Donald laughed, unfazed by their threats. Mark stood his ground, his voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through him. "I have better things to do than entertain a fight with you. Leave us alone." Donald smirked, his eyes glinting with malice. "Do you think you're too smart for me?" he whispered before punching Mark in the stomach, sending him to the ground. Before Donald could strike again, his sister Valerie intervened, grabbing his arm and pulling him back. "That's enough, Donald," she said firmly, her voice cutting through the tension like a blade. Valerie was striking in a way that immediately caught Mark's attention, even amidst the chaos of the cafeteria. She had a natural beauty that seemed effortless, yet completely captivating. Her auburn hair flowed with soft waves that framed her delicate face, catching the light and giving her an almost radiant glow. Her eyes, the color of honey with flecks of amber, sparkled with both warmth and intensity, as though they could uncover secrets with a single glance. There was something deeply expressive about them. They held an unspoken intelligence and a subtle, guarded vulnerability that made her all the more intriguing. Her features were harmonious and graceful. High cheekbones, a slightly upturned nose, and full lips that seemed to hold a natural pout. Valerie's skin was smooth and had a faint sun-kissed tone, hinting at someone who loved the outdoors. She carried herself with a quiet confidence, her posture straight yet relaxed, as though she had nothing to prove but much to protect. What struck Mark most was her aura, a blend of strength and softness. She seemed far removed from the brash arrogance of her brother Donald. She wore fitted jeans and a simple burgundy sweater that accentuated her lean, athletic figure without drawing attention away from her presence. She didn't seem to dress for show, but managed to look effortlessly put together, the kind of person whose beauty didn't need embellishment. It wasn't just her appearance that captivated Mark. It was the way she stood up to Donald without hesitation. Her calm but firm demeanor in pulling Donald back revealed her inner resolve and sense of justice, qualities that contrasted sharply with the chaos unfolding around her. Valerie carried a maturity and self-assurance that made her seem older than her years, someone who could navigate both strength and kindness with ease. For Mark, she wasn't just attractive. She was magnetic. The moment felt brief, but it lingered in his mind far longer than he expected. Something about Valerie, her courage, her presence, her undeniable beauty, stayed with him as the day went on. Ben and Jason struggled against the grip of Donald's minions, but they were outmatched. The rest of the cafeteria pretended not to notice, though a few students continued recording the altercation. The PE teacher, Mr. Anderson, finally arrived, his booming voice silencing the chaos. "All of you, principal's office, now." As they left the cafeteria, Mark glanced at Valerie, silently thanking her for stepping in. On the way to the principal's office, Mark turned to Ben. "Who was that girl who defended me?" Ben laughed, shaking his head. "That's Valerie. She's Donald's sister." Donald overheard the comment and shot Mark a warning glare. "If I catch you talking to her, you'll regret it." Mark didn't respond, but his mind raced. Valerie's intervention had been unexpected, and her presence added a layer of complexity to the already volatile situation. As they walked to the principal's office, Mark couldn't help but wonder what the rest of high school had in store, and whether he was ready for it.